Today we're going to talk about the World Eaters and what to expect when you're facing them on the table. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. We're back for another Know Your Enemy type video. Again, this time we're going to be looking over one of the Chaos Legions, this time focusing on the World Eaters, talking about their Legion traits, and the various tricks and tactics they got from the Faith and Fury Psychic Awakening book. If you do wind up facing off against some very angry red-painted Marines, then hopefully this might leave you a little bit better informed about what sort of options they have for getting their guys in combat with you very quickly, and what other unique tricks that they have when they get there. Let's jump into it then, and talk about the World Eaters. So first of all, unusually out of some of the legions, they are a little bit restricted in what they can take, as Khorne has such a disdain for Psychers. You can't have any of them in World Eaters detachments, and every unit that can do so must take a Mark of Khorne. This does mean that they're locked out of certain options, and say in general you're more likely to see World Eaters formed as part of a Chaos Force rather than the whole thing, but the Mark of Khorne certainly has its upsides. It allows you to use Stratagems to fight again, and you can also use the Icon of Khorne in Khorne infantry units, which allows you to reroll charges, which is very important when your primary way of dealing damage is in melee. Despite Khorne not being a particular fan of Psychers, if you do have Psychers in other detachments, then to my knowledge I don't believe there's anything to prevent you casting spells on Khorne units in World Eaters, although I'm sure that Khorne wouldn't be very pleased about this. It does mean that if your opponent has a unit of Khorne Berserkers or Possessed or something, then they could still potentially use things like Warp Time to get them far closer to the enemy. The World Eater's unique Legion trait is called Butcher's Nails, and it's basically a nice simple +1 attack on the charge. A pretty significant buff to their damage output, this one, and it's going to have bigger impacts on units with lower amount of attacks originally, particularly when those attacks are pretty high quality. Things like Chaos Terminators are quite a good example of a unit that will be helped out a lot by this. But obviously any charging unit will get a serious buff, and it's certainly no bad thing on Khorne Berserkers with their combat special rule. Talking of Khorne Berserkers, I thought we'd be remiss if we didn't at least mention them briefly in a review of the World Eaters, seeing as they have so much synergy with their options. At the moment, Khorne Berserkers will cost you 15 points without a chain axe, or 16 points if you bring one along, and they can be fielded in very big units all the way up to 20. They have a fairly standard profile, similar to Chaos and regular Space Marines. They only have 1 wound and a 3+ save, but their combat abilities are enhanced. They're all strength 5 and have 2 attacks. I believe that the optimal way to field the squad at the moment would be with a chain axe and chainsword, which on the charge between Butcher's Nails and Hateful Assault would give them 4 strength 6 AP-1 attacks with the chain axe and 1 further attack with the chainsword, so a pretty impressive 5 attacks per guy. On top of this, their special rule, Blood for the Blood God, allows them the devastating potential of being able to fight a second time. Basically this is chosen as another activation for them, so if you really wanted to, you could interrupt in between the first fight and the second fight. Say if you'd taken some heavy casualties from the first fight and wanted to get in some more damage to the Khorne Berserkers, potentially even killing some of them before they fight again, which could save you quite a bit of damage. Being able to fight and then fight again is really quite a powerful ability, so beware if Khorne Berserkers do make the charge, they'll be getting a lot of extra movement out of that special rule. And if they have made a charge and killed your unit, then they can still use this rule to activate again, even if the only thing that they gain out of it is an extra 3-inch movement, then another 3-inch movement after that. That could easily be enough to get them onto an objective, or to get them in combat with other units just to tie them up. Or Khorne Chaos Space Marine Infantry can fight again with another 3 command point stratagem, so if for some reason the Khorne Berserkers haven't quite done enough damage in their first 2 fights, your opponent can make them fight again to get yet another phase of ludicrous activation damage out of them. Basically using the interrupt stratagem can be really handy against them when they're fighting, as it will likely kill some Khorne Berserkers before they get to fight that second or even third time. It's also quite easy to stack this with other abilities, such as say buffs in combat from Chaos Priests, reroll 1 auras, reroll wound rolls in combat from Exalted Champions, or maybe even just the good old standard Death to the False Emperor, meaning they'll be wounding things very easily indeed. In general, when playing Khorne Berserkers, the philosophy would have to be either you strike first and kill them, or you just don't get into combat with them, because in terms of melee damage per points, they're some of the best units in the game. World Eaters are going to be particularly likely to field more of these guys, because they can be taken as troops in a World Eaters detachment, instead of elites for more normal Chaos Space Marines. In terms of delivery, you'll often tend to see these guys fielded in 10-man squads in Rhinos, as the Rhino has good synergy being able to provide extra durability as they get into charge range. The foot slogging along allied warp time, along with using a stratagem from Faith and Fury, could easily get them first turn charges as well. With the extra attack, World Eaters characters are going to be fearsome adversaries in their own right, and a lot of their warlord traits and relics are geared towards making them very slightly better in close combat. In terms of relics, they have Gorefather for this job, a strength +2, AP -2, flat 3 damage chain axe, where wound rolls of 6 give you 3 mortal wounds, so people with this particular one will be very fighty indeed. And they have another couple of interesting relics, a specific priest one for the Banner of Rage, which gives them a +1 attack aura once per battle, although I'm not 100% sure how much this one will be taken, as to be honest World Eaters tend to have plenty of attacks in close combat, and you are probably getting into the realm of overkill by taking this. Another little surprise one to look out for is the Crimson Killer, which is a relic plasma pistol that basically hits with pretty much the strength of a las cannon. It is only 12-inch range and one shot like regular plasma pistols, but it is strength 9, AP -3 with a flat 3 damage, and on a 4+ to the wound roll you also take a mortal wound. As relic pistols go, it's really not a bad one. It's basically giving one character the power of a short-range las cannon. In terms of warlord traits, again there are many and varied close combat buffs, not all of which I think are worth mentioning. One of the potentially more scarier ones is another +D3 attacks if there's more enemy models within 3 inches of them than there are friendly ones. Just another little one that could make a World Eater's character even more scary on the charge. Probably I think that the trait that you're most likely to see coming up against though is the Violent Urgency Warlord trait, which is a 6-inch aura of +1 to advance and charge rolls for World Eaters units. To be honest, for the most part, World Eaters units aren't going to struggle doing the damage when they're in close combat, it's more a question of getting them there. And this one has particularly good synergy with any units that are coming out of Deep Strike, giving them an 8-inch charge rather than a 9-inch charge. In combination with any icons of wrath that are going around in the army, it could mean that you have some very reliable charges coming at you with World Eaters. Finally, we'll just quickly run through their stratagems, as stratagems are some of the easiest ways that you can get tripped up with rules that you didn't see coming, as the opponent doesn't really have to mention them until they actually do them. For 1 command point, Scorn of Sorcery will allow you to shut down a psychic power within 24 inches, and of course the World Eaters player can re-roll the dice on that, and could potentially ruin a very useful psychic power, whether that's a Grey Knight's Gate of Infinity, Eldar Doom or Jinx, or other chaos with warp time. So I'd bear in mind that any one psychic power that you really need to get through might just fail. Next, 1 command point for Apoplectic Frenzy is an excellent pre-game move stratagem, where basically infantry can move up to 9 inches before the game starts. This is the one that could allow you to have foot-slogging berserkers, possessed, or other units have a very decent chance of making a first turn charge, particularly if this was combined with other abilities such as the +1 to charge from the Warlord trait, maybe an Icon of Wrath, maybe an allied warp timing sorcerer. For an army that's usually going to be wanting to get into close combat, 1 command point to get 9 inches closer to getting there is really not a bad deal. Could also be very scary on a unit of Chaos Terminators, if they were starting on the board, or perhaps a large unit of Raptors, Warp Talons or Possessed. World Eaters can generate a few extra command points by killing enemy characters with their characters, very fluffy for pleasing Khorne, by using the Skulls for the Skull Throne stratagem, which means that you get a +D3 command points whenever one character kills another in melee. Basically, if the World Eaters player rolls a 2 or 3 on the D3, then they'll get 1 or 2 command points respectively. Possibly what I think might be the single best value stratagem out of their unique ones from Faith and Fury is the Red Butcher's Terminator stratagem. This one costs 2 command points. It basically makes their Terminators into pretty much Khorne Berserkers. You use it pre-game, and for those 2 command points you get +1 to strength on those Terminators, and they also fight twice in the Blood for the Blood God rule, such as the Khorne Berserkers do. Now, provided they do make close combat at some game, this is just hilariously scary. It's a crazy amount of damage that you could be doing for the command points invested. The +1 to strength buff is frankly fairly good on its own. It's particularly useful for things like strength 4 power swords, as going to strength 5 is really handy, or any power fists that happen to be in the squad as well, as going from strength 8 to strength 9 is really handy with cracking super heavies and really tough tanks. Will be very solid with lightning claws as well, but knowing that you're able to fight twice every single fight phase is just crazily powerful. You're effectively doubling the damage output of what can be a very scary unit indeed, as you can take up to 10 Terminators in the unit. Usually you'd have to pay 3 command points to be able to fight twice with a unit. That is often a very good deal for being able to do so, but to be able to do that for 2 command points for every turn in the game potentially is on a whole nother level. If you're facing these guys, I'd expect them to be deep striking in with +1 to charge from that Warlord trait, and probably re-rolling charges through an Icon of Wrath in the unit, so they're likely going to be able to get in, and they'll be able to fight twice and carve through your front ranks. After this, I'd very much treat them as the absolute priority threat on the table, as if they're able to fight twice each turn, then they're going to mop up units in close combat very quickly indeed. Moving on, we have Kill Maim Burn, which is a 6-inch consolidation stratagem. Could be particularly handy on Khorne Berserkers there, for getting them in close combat with other units in your backfield. It's just going to be a little bit easier for them to lock up backfield units than they would otherwise be able to be. 1 command point for Wild Fury makes any unit's AP 1 better than normal. and this one's very solid on anything with low AP, particularly chainswords and chain axes, though it could still be a potentially worthwhile buff using on higher AP weapons as well. Again, just a chance for World Eaters players to get even more damage in close combat. Then we have a bit of a weird one, which is 2 command points for Blood for the Blood God. Basically, if they kill an enemy unit, then you get to auto-pass morale for the entire army in their next morale phase, which I guess is kind of fluffy, but their leadership is pretty high anyway, and you could always use the insane bravery stratagem to pass on 2 command points, so I don't think this one's going to be seeing use very much whatsoever. And finally we have Stoke the Nails, which is just another close combat buff that you can layer on with all the rest. It basically gives you the exploding 6s on 6s with Death for the False Emperor, which is usually a flat 17% combat buff, unless you have any other fancy ways of getting +1 to hit with the melee unit. And it means that if you have the same ability for Imperium things, then you get to use it on a 5+ rather than a 6. Again, combining something like this with Wild Fury for better AP, and Veterans of the Long War for +1 to wound, means that your World Eaters unit is just going to be tearing a complete hole in the enemy, even if there's only a few of them left. So as an overview, when you're facing World Eaters, beware double fighting shenanigans from Khorne Berserkers. You really don't want them anywhere near your lines, as I'm sure you knew already. It's good to know that infantry can move 9 inches pre-game. You can have Red Butcher's Terminators that can be fighting twice. They can counter psychic powers fairly easily with Scorn of Sorcery, and once they're in melee, they've got access to a wide amount of stratagems that can buff their combat in various different ways. If you've got any other experience, either fighting with or against these Sons of Angron, please let me know down in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics for regular 40k tactics content coming out every day. If you have been enjoying my videos, I'd just like to mention that the channel does have a Patreon page, which is what allows me to spend enough time making these videos away from my regular job. If you have been enjoying regularly, then any support is greatly appreciated. The link is down in the video description below. And channel patrons get access to various other things, such as seeing videos early every single week, regular polls to see what sort of videos come next on the channel, and entry into the Auspex Tactics prize draws, where we give away fairly large sets of miniatures each month, such as in August we're giving away 3 copies of the Indomitors box set. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support the channel, then the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.